Thanks for coming. The first thing that I need everybody to do is stand up. Everybody. Everybody standing? Obviously, if you can't stand, don't. Now I need you to sit back down. And pretty much I just wanted to do that so that I could. I was just thinking about how much power Ashley Proctor had in the last session, and like, wow, what power he had. So there's literally no point to that. We could make a point out of it though, maybe by saying it's maybe a metaphor for useless technology. So that could be good. I'm going to open my water here really quick and move along. But you can look at a more interesting slide. This is my face. Yeah. From a time when, I think you're losing the signal here. This was, I think when I was in Impact Hub was when this picture was taken, but it's very nice. I just want to tell you a little bit about myself and my background. So I started my career in marketing with Clearlink. That was about 7 years ago. I started an Impact Hub location in Salt Lake City, Utah with a couple of friends and managed that for 2 years. Then I moved to San Francisco and worked for Parasoma as well as another co-working space. At Parasoma, I led the Education and Events program. I started co-working insights while I was working at Parasoma to it's a blog basically. There's lots of articles on co-working on there, I suggest you go check it out. And at some point I decided I would do this co-working tools guide in 2016. It was a much bigger project than I thought it would be. The idea was to review all of the co-working management platforms to kind of compare them, like how they do specific things and what kind of features they do and stuff like that. It is still relevant, although fairly outdated. For example, Habu, who I work with now, which is at the bottom, I joined them afterwards, and at the time really had a pretty minimal feature set, and now in a year everything changes so fast in technology. So definitely go check it out, but don't treat it as like a Bible or anything. We'll just leave it to that. Cool. I also have done like a lot of like consulting and stuff like that around the world. So, anyways, enough of that. So when you're first starting a space, who of you have not started, who are launching a space, just launched a space, who's not a veteran in the co-working industry, I guess? Raise your hand. Okay, a few of you. Great. Okay. Cool. So in the beginning, you're doing a lot of things, right? You're raising funding, you're buying furniture, you're finding a space, you're securing a lease, you're figuring out how you're going to build community, how you're going to attract members, you're figuring out your technology stack, which is what we're talking about, how to do internet, you're figuring out community partnerships, all kinds of things that can feel a little bit like this. For those of you who haven't seen IT Crowd, I strongly recommend it. So you will go out and search for technology to try to help you with this job, right? Other than hiring other minions to help you out. The first thing I want to talk about is the one tool myth. So the one tool myth is this idea, so you're super overwhelmed, as we saw, and you try to find the perfect tool. So you're trying to find a tool, maybe you come across one even that says, hey, if you're a co-working space, we provide automated billing, we provide flexible membership plans, we provide membership automation machine, we provide painless and easy community building, which I'll tell you doesn't exist, and we do foot massages and everything, and it's amazing, and so you decide to sign up. All excited, relieved that this co-working thing really isn't going to be a big deal at all. And then you open up the admin dashboard, and it looks something like this. The idea here is that, I don't know what's going on here. Anyways, probably have some reaction kind of like that. Unfortunately, probably get distracted by this the whole time, let me pull out. That's really quick. I'm a writer, I don't typically give talks, so this is definitely a new thing for me. So complicated tools often require more support. So tools that claim to do a lot of things, or rather claim to do everything for you, whether that's it's, a lot of things will, like, we set up and manage your Wi-Fi for you. We do all of your access control. We do all of your billing and your marketing and everything. Typically, they require more support because they're more complicated, as we saw. And often, things like easy Wi-Fi setup still mean easy for IT professionals, not easy for first-time co-working founders. So they still tend to be fairly complicated. A lot of large providers sometimes will lock you into contracts, long-term contracts, which are never great, and you also get locked in because you're using their system will only work with their software will only work with their internet as well as their access control system. So the switching cost becomes a lot higher. Yeah, the prices tend to be a lot higher with tools that try to do everything as well. And in general, whenever a company tries to do everything, they tend to do a lot of things a little bit poorly. This is also just my opinion. You can disagree if you like. Tech is not here to replace us. It's here to enhance the things that we're doing. It's here to enhance the communities that we're building. Really, technology is about people. And so I advocate for a better approach, which is the multi-tool approach. Jack pointed out to me that in some cultures, multi-tool is literally the Swiss Army knife that I showed earlier, but I mean multiple tools, is what I'm trying to say. So the rest of the talk will follow kind of a basic category breakdown of these. And you can also be as sophisticated as you want to be, or not. So we'll break each section down into basic, moderate, and sophisticated. The first one we're going to talk about is membership billing and management. Obviously you can't get paid without billing technology. Managing members also gets really confusing as you try to grow. So we'll start off talking about the basic thing, and you'll see why that doesn't scale very well. For basic memberships and billing, obviously, so one of the things to think about as we go through the talk is that technology isn't always what you think it is. Technology is everything we use. The chair you're sitting on is technology. The space we're in is technology. At some point, someone built a house, and then people thought that was amazing, right? And then they were like, "Wow, that's cool. Why would you live in a house?" Same with the chair. So some of these basic examples will seem kind of elementary, but it's all for a point. So cash or printed manual online invoicing, manual credit card processing on site, manual membership tracking, bill list of providers over here. Typically these options are simple and cheap, but they scale pretty poorly. So when I was starting with Impact Hub, when we got to about 20 members, we were doing most of our membership management, tracking what membership plans people were on, and charging people via PayPal using Google Sheets. At about 15 to 20 members, they started getting pretty unmanageable. And it's not so much, if you think about it, it's not so much the time that it takes to do it, it's really how complicated it becomes to remember who's on what plan, did you already charge them, did you send an invoice, oops, you sent an invoice to the wrong person. So, great option for people who are small or like to do things manually. If we go to a more moderate level, we have things like automatic online payment processing, recurring billing, basic membership plans. Some example providers here like Chargeify, ChargeBee, and Recurly. These provide a kind of a more scalable way to build and manage memberships for members, but they are pretty static. So they don't usually come with built-in ways for charges on a member's account to update dynamically based on their activities in the space or based on meeting room bookings and things like that. And then on the sophisticated level, we've got a lot of stuff. And this is what we work on at Habu. There are other providers as well here at the conference. We've all got booths. You should come meet us tomorrow if you're around. Cobot and Exodus are also here. But things like, obviously, online payment processing and recurring monthly billing, but like fully flexible billing where you can do things automatically as well as manually. Member accounts and charges are updated dynamically based on usage. Member self-sign-up and account management is much better, or exists at all. And there's lots of integrations with other tools like meeting room booking and printing management and stuff like that, and access control. So I suggest starting with a dedicated platform, personally, and then you fill in the gaps. So like I said, one tool is not going to do everything for you, but I think starting with a dedicated platform is the best way to go, and then find other great tools that are good at what they do and use those to fill in your technology stack gaps. They are pretty easy to use. Most of them are pretty easy to get started with, although they vary in ease of setup and ease of use between different providers, so challenge individual providers to find out what they're about. Yeah, but they can provide things like custom plans, charges for add-ons, member self-sign-up, and also put some of the administrative burden into the hands of your members with like account management and stuff like that. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've got to say on that. You probably thought this whole talk was going to be on management platforms, but it's not. We've got lots of other cool stuff to cover. Yeah, so that kind of covers it for memberships and billing. Now we'll move on to marketing, which I think there's a lot of really great marketing tech. Personally, I do marketing. I do marketing for Habu. I've been marketing for a long time. So it's a really exciting piece of technology for me, and I think it's something that co-working spaces are very much underutilized, and it can be a powerful tool in lieu of hiring someone to do your marketing. So obviously on the basic level, we've got printed materials, website, word of mouth. Word of mouth, you could really argue it's not exactly technology, but I put it here because it underlies all of the marketing efforts we do. It's always going to be the best form of marketing you have. So think of every piece of technology that comes after this as not better than word of mouth, and it never will be. So just put it into perspective so that you're not standing up and sitting down and being useless technology. When it comes to printed materials, I think it is a basic form of technology. It's nice to have flyers and rate cards on site, so when people do walk-ins, they can take them away. Websites are something that a lot of co-working spaces get confused about when they first start, and I think they stress too much about it. They think I need to hire someone for building my website. On platforms like WordPress and Squarespace, you can create a very basic information website for really little cost. With WordPress, there are thousands of premium themes. I use WordPress, I like it a lot, but Squarespace is probably a little bit easier to use for setting up a website. You can definitely do it yourself, and you don't need a very complex website. I think a lot of people try to make it a little too complex. On the moderate level, we've got online mailing lists, analytics, directories, and social media networks. So the first bit, we'll take online mailing lists. So email is super important because emails convert. I prefer to use MailChimp, but there's also Campaign Monitor, there's other tools out there. Basically what you're doing with that is you're getting people to opt into your mailing lists. I'm sure a lot of people are very familiar with this, so I shouldn't have to explain it. But emails convert. We see way higher engagement and conversion with emails than we do with any other marketing platform we use. It's a great way to invite people to events and things like that. It's also highly underutilized. So actually I was chatting with one of my colleagues today, Jack, and he was telling me a story about a conference in London, a co-working conference, where the speaker was saying that asked the audience how many people regularly send out a newsletter, and one person raised their hand of an audience of 50 people. And so if your competition's not using email lists to market it to potential members or to tell the members about things going on in the space, you definitely should be, because you're probably going to be ahead of the pack in that one. It's really easy to switch email platforms, so I wouldn't stress too much about which one you choose in the beginning. You just download your list as a CSV. You can even import your HTML templates into other ones. So next we'll talk about directories. So there's a lot of directories out there. I suggest you just put yourself on all of them. It's pretty much that simple. So yeah, take a day if you need to. Get on FlySpaces, which is here at the conference. Get on ShareDesk. Get on Liquid Space. Circuits Wave. Get on Cowork 2724. Just be on all of them. There's literally no reason not to. On the off chance that you get a member through them, great, that's a new member. It's typically a positive boost to your SEO. So great piece of technology for you to use. Also, other people built it. So all you have to do is just list yourself. Someone's giving me a peace sign in the back, I don't know. Next, we'll talk about analytics. There's a lot of fancy analytics platforms out there for startups and SaaS companies and stuff. I think the most important one for a co-working space is Google Analytics. It's really important for you to understand where your traffic is coming from on your website. You might not be able to get as fine detail as which keyword they search, because that's kind of gone away in the recent years with Google. But you'll be able to understand if most people come from social media, or if they're coming direct, if they're coming from an email campaign you set up. You can learn how to use Google Analytics online with like lynda.com or through YouTube videos, and you can get pretty smart pretty fast. So, the last one here, let's see, so is social media networks. So for me, I really only like Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is really all about conversations, so it's a great way you can comment, you can follow people, you can reply to them, and a lot of times even just a little bit of engagement will get their attention, and then that person might visit your website, they might come in for a tour. Yeah. Then Instagram, your space is visual. Instagram is a visual marketing platform. So Instagram tends to lend itself as a perfect co-working space marketing platform. So we were able to get hundreds of people to come to events for Impact Hub because we had like 12,000 followers on Instagram. So we would post pictures of the space and the events going on, so our feed looked really great. But also we would occasionally post promotion and get lots of people. So it's a great way to show off your space. You'll notice that Facebook is crossed off here because as far as free marketing goes, I don't feel that Facebook is a really great platform anymore. Something like less than 16% of your followers will see your posts organically without paying for them. Yeah. So on the sophisticated level, we've got things like engagement automation, content schedulers and management systems, online advertising platforms. We'll start with the engagement automation. So there used to be a lot of platforms like Instagress that would automate your engagement on Instagram. So we'd like, follow, comment for you. Those have mostly been shut down, sadly. Which some of you might think that's not sad, but I think it's sad as a marketer. There's another one that's come out called Combin, which is really interesting because it kind of semi-automates things for you. You still have to search and tell it what to do, but it doesn't do it on a schedule. So basically it's like a mass liker, a mass commenter, a mass follower, a mass unfollower. Check it out. Content schedulers are awesome. You should have a content calendar. And things like Later allow you to post to Instagram sort of automatically. You still have to download the post to your phone from the app and then post it to Instagram, which is a little bit manual, but it allows you to schedule things out in the future. And Buffer or Hootsuite, if any of you are familiar, allows you to schedule Facebook, Instagram, Twitter posts, stuff like that. And then we'll talk about online advertising. So you can learn all about advertising on social networks or Google AdWords online via YouTube or lynda.com or Udemy or something like this. And I suggest you check them out. But the really exciting thing with advertising right now for me is remarketing. It's that kind of creepy thing that happens when you go to Amazon and look at something and then it sort of embarrassingly follows you around the internet and everybody's like, why are you looking at socks that are like different mismatched colors and stuff? No reason, I just want mismatched socks. So that's what AdRoll does. There are other providers that do remarketing. It just cookies the visitors to your website, and then you create ads that it feeds them around the internet in different ad networks. Moving on, we'll talk about communication. So I separate communication from marketing because I think that marketing is about selling, and communication is just about clearly and effectively communicating information to your team and to your members. And sometimes it's also confused with community, but it's not true. So the most basic form of communication is talking. That's what I'm doing right now. That's what you guys are going to do after this, and hopefully say good things. You are the provider of this. So I think 90% of communication problems are handled with face-to-face conversations. A lot of context gets missed when you send text or when you send email, especially emotion. So I think you can solve a lot of your problems with talking with your members and talking to your team. On the moderate level, we've got business email. I've pretty much only ever used G Suite by Google.
I'm sure that the providers, but I think G Suite is really easy to set up and manage team access and team email and stuff like that. Everybody knows what email is, so not spending more time on it. On the sophisticated level of communication, we've got chat systems and online community platforms. So chat systems like Slack are super useful in the way that email isn't. People don't often check email, or they don't, or it's either on purpose or they're busy. I think more often than not, it's on purpose. So the benefit with chat is it's more immediate, right? So you'll be more likely to get an immediate response from your team members. It can also be used, a lot of co-working spaces use Slack as a way to allow their members to communicate with each other. Online community platforms, there are a couple that come to mind for me, Bizner and Hilo. I don't think Bizner is here at the conference, but I could be mistaken. What these are is they're essentially social media platform replacements. So it is like having your own dedicated social media platform where your members can post pictures, post events, chat with each other, stuff like that. I have a really strong warning with platforms like this, and some people might disagree with me. People don't want another platform. And so for me, I think it's best to go where your members already are. So the biggest problem and challenge with dedicated community platforms is that they will not be used. So the adoption rate is pretty low because people don't want to have another login. They're already on Facebook chatting with people. They're already on Slack chatting with people. And so you'll see that Facebook has come back in here. And that's because people, depending, this is regional specific, I'm not sure, depends on the social networks that are popular in your region, but in general, I've seen most co-working spaces use Facebook as a really great community platform, a really great communication platform, because people are already on it, so utilizing Facebook groups is I think, the way to go. And we'll move on from communication. So internet. I don't know a whole lot about the internet. And I suspect that a lot of people don't know a whole lot about the internet. There's a really great episode of IT Crowd where he convinces us that that box is the internet. So I think that a lot of people are confused by it. So we're going to kind of, since I don't know a whole lot about it, I'm going to break the mold of the kind of basic, moderate, sophisticated structure, and I'm just going to give a couple of pieces of advice. So now, the first thing is, if you're not an expert, just hire one, because your network setup is your life when it comes to your co-working space, and you want it to be correct. The next one, equipment. I don't know anything about co-working equipment. I set up our network at Impact Hub. I'm sure it was awful. Eventually we had someone come in and redo it. These are some brands that people I know like. So some people like Meraki, some people like Ubiquity. The colleague was telling me that Ubiquity has a really nice app that you can use to diagnose internet problems. That's very user-friendly, and so maybe you want to check that one out. But you can check out their websites, ask other people for recommendations. I'd be happy to connect you with the people who gave you these recommendations as well. The other thing is, don't forget to fail over. Yes, fail over. So a failover is when you have a backup internet service provider. So you should have 2 connections. So the thing that's the worst thing to happen in a co-working space is for the internet to go down, because as a community manager or the operations manager, you are now everybody's worst enemy. Everybody who liked you this morning no longer likes you. And no amount of pizza will fix it. So instead, with a failover, so the way that this works is your router is essentially, you have 2 internet connections, so yeah, you're paying twice the internet bill, which is, yeah, bad, maybe, but I think the alternative is worse. When one goes down, for a certain amount of time, the router doesn't get a connection to it. It switches over to the other one, typically often within seconds, at most minutes. That would be a pretty slow one. But the nice thing with this is, instead of the internet being down for potentially hours for your members and ruining someone's day at work, you've given them a little bit of a hiccup and everything's fine. And chances are they'll probably forget about it in 2 minutes. Let's see. Next we'll talk about access control, which is another area that I'm not an expert in, but I have used and set up systems. So on your basic level, we'll go back to this basic, moderate, sophisticated format. So on the basic level, you've got keys, just basic, normal mechanical keys. Single keys, you can set up operating hours, you can do multi-key. So with a single key, the system there is you have opening hours, and you have closing hours. Downside is you don't have 24/7 access. With a multi-key concept, you can pass out keys, keep track of them in a spreadsheet, and you suddenly have 24/7 access. Congratulations. However, that is a pretty big security risk. If you've got keys floating out there, changing locks can be really expensive if people don't return keys. So I don't tend to be a fan of that option. The next level up is keypad locks. So these you can buy from pretty much any manufacturer. This basically means you're inputting a key code and you're, you can either do individual key codes for individual members or a universal code for the entire co-working space. These tend to be a pain in the butt to program because you're programming it literally on the unit itself. And managing the individual keys, especially as you get past 20, 30 members, is a real pain. So keep that in mind. It scales a little bit better, but it's still a pain to manage. So on the sophisticated level, we have online access control portals and RFID access systems. So again, these tend to be highly localized. Just like with internet and your IT stuff, you're going to want to go with a local provider, with a local installer. These also tend to be pretty highly localized. However, there are global providers such as Keezy. The global providers are starting to grow more in the market, and so I don't have a ton of experience dealing with them, so I suggest you keep an eye on it. And one of my colleagues, Jack, knows a little bit more about it than I do, so if you want to come chat with us, we'd be happy to tell you a little bit about it. The nice thing with this is you suddenly have a portal you can use on your computer to manage the programming of individual key cards. So you don't have to go walk up to the door and actually manually put in a key code. This allows you to bulk revoke privileges for people, get a snapshot or a kind of like an overview of the people who are accessing your space, when they've accessed your space with activity logs. It also allows you to remotely open and close the door. So say like someone forgot their key card or walked out to have a cigarette and they left everything inside. With a remote access online control portal, this member could literally call you and you could unlock the door for them, which is pretty sweet. So on the basic level, when I was preparing for this talk, I posted on Facebook what people's most important technologies were, and Michael from Dojo Bali said chairs. And I was like, that's actually really smart, because if people had to sit in these chairs that you're in all day to co-work, I don't think that they'd be very happy. But if you give them nice, comfortable air-on chairs, I think you'd be a really cool co-working provider. Don't give your members don't give your members technology that you don't want to sit on. So if you have a more comfortable chair than your members, then you might be doing something wrong. You can do things like standing desks, treadmill desks, lounge furniture, blah, blah, blah. And let's also forget that coffee and tea are the most essential part of co-working technology. On the moderate level, equipment and supplies will vary wildly depending on the type of space that you have. If you are a space for architects, or you have a lot of architects, you might want a plotter, which is a special large format printer that architects use. You might want a fancy printer, you might want a photo printer, all kinds of different stuff. So it's going to vary, but the point here is think about the type of space you are, and the type of members you're going to have, and what kind of equipment that they're going to need. And then supplies. So I can't tell you how many times I've been to a space and I needed a paper clip, and nobody buys paper clips. It's really strange. I don't want to staple this thing because I don't want to damage the document. I don't know why, but please have paper clips. But more importantly, have everything else. Have markers, tape, scissors, stuff like that. So, and then the last category, which is a big one, resources and meeting room management and printing management. So, close on a big, meaty topic here. Again, we see Habu, Cobot, and Exodus coming back into the fold. So, the nice thing with going with a dedicated provider like Habu, Cobot, and Exodus for your meeting room management, as well as opposed to things like Robin and Team, which are dedicated meeting room management softwares, is that Habu, Cobot, and Exodus can integrate with your billing system. It's all built into the platform. So when members book meeting rooms, it's being reflected on their account and stuff like that. And there's a whole lot of bells and whistles that can go into that. The one thing I would add, the main thing to take away from this
though, is don't use Google Calendars, because your double bookings are going to be crazy, and it's really going to suck. I recommend definitely using something. Then we go on to printing management. I have not used any of the dedicated printing management platforms that exist, like Easy, ThinPrint, PaperCut. But the way I tend to keep it pretty loose when it comes to printing management. I just let people print whatever they want. If it becomes a problem and someone's printing like books off on the printer, I just have a conversation with them. The next level I like above that is just using the built-in functionality on really high-tech printers, where you can assign user roles, you can assign pin codes, and assign limits on the amounts that they can print. So high-end multi-complex printers will come with those features built in, and often you can have some kind of online management portal. That way when someone prints their limit, they just can't print anymore, and they need to talk to you if they want to increase their limit or something. However, that doesn't integrate with your billing and all of the stuff that people tend to want to do. So ThinPrint, PaperCut, Easy, those types of printing management systems, some of them have built integrations with some of the co-working software providers, which is nice. But a warning here, your results may vary. I've had friends who have loved these services, and I've had friends who've had a lot of issues with them as well. When it comes to the quality of printing, things being formatted incorrectly, someone printing off a whole 40-page presentation and having it being charged for it, and then having it be the wrong format or something like that. So, let's see if there's anything else that we need to cover on this one. One other thing, just on the meeting room management, things to consider. Your user's experience is very important. So, when you're choosing a platform, make sure that you're looking at not only does the tool have the functionality to book meeting rooms, but is it something my members are going to like? Is it something that's going to be easy to use? Are they going to have to complete a 12-step booking process? Because I can tell you that no member wants to do that. So the user experience needs to be easy, it needs to be seamless. And also, some providers work well with door display systems or have their own door display systems. Habu doesn't yet, but we will. And but the nice thing with door display systems is that you have an iPad on the door, it will tell you when the next meeting room is, or the next meeting is in that meeting room, and often allow you to book the meeting room on the iPad itself, possibly with a user pin code or something like this. Yeah, so that is pretty much it. I just want to remind you before we finish up, there's a lot to consider for tech. The talk, we could possibly go down every rabbit hole there is. I could, again, I'm also a writer, not a talker, so if the presentation was hard to follow, I'm very sorry. Come talk to me afterwards, I'll explain in more detail. But there's a lot to consider. So follow up with providers, follow up with me. I wrote a co-working tools guide, like I said. I've done a lot of research on this stuff. And there's a lot of things I don't know, so follow up with people, try to meet people who do know things about the internet and your access control systems more than I do. Have realistic expectations for your technology. Again, back to the one tool myth. One tool will not do everything for you, and it will not replace you. So remember that technology is enhancing the things that you're doing, but co-working is about people, right? It's about enhancing the ability to scale personal connections, and I think that that's really important to consider. Yeah, so when you're implementing technology solutions, just consider your impact that you're having on your community. Are you making it harder for people to use your space, or easier for people to use your space? That's it. That's all I got for you. Sorry.
We're here, we're awesome.
Yeah.
Click on this link.
Yeah, if you want to know more information, click on the link. Yeah, so that's what I would do with it. Yeah. Another question? Yeah.
Could you talk more about sales CRM?
Sales CRMs? Yeah, that was a good one that I didn't put in there. Yeah, technology, very wide topic. So, sales CRMs. I personally don't think that any of the dedicated co-working management platforms do the real CRM stuff very well yet. They might. And they help with things like member self-sign up, putting people into your funnel, but as far as seeing what stages people are at or managing customer relations, I like tools I've always really liked Highrise, which is by the makers of Basecamp. Highrise is a pretty lightweight
The design doesn't look beautiful, but it's really simple and easy to use as a CRM. I don't like Salesforce very much, but that is another option. You can also use HubSpot, I believe. Yep. Capsule? Capsule. Okay, cool. Yeah. Anybody else have a favorite CRM that they like? Zoho? Okay, yeah. I haven't used that one. Cool. Another question?
There are various CRM available in the market, right? But how to figure out what's the most suitable sales CRM for you?
Yeah, sales CRM. It's another one. It's like email lists, right? It's really easy to export your data and import it into another one. So I just say the best thing with technology, if the cost of switching is low, especially in the beginning when it's the lowest, just test them. Try them out. As far as what would be useful in a sales CRM for a co-working space, is that kind of more what you mean, or just?
So let's say the size of the company is 50, right? When we had like 10 people in the team, we can manage with the Microsoft Excel also, right?
Yeah.
But when we grow, when we have like 200 people in the team or 1,000 people in the team, we would have to move from one sales CRM to another sales CRM. So how to figure out that now at this point in time, this is the most suitable sales CRM for my company. And 2 years down the line, we might have to move to another sales CRM.
Yeah, can I clarify, by sales CRM, do you mean one of these kind of co-working management platforms that do billing and stuff, or just?
Salesforce.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've mostly used Highrise. I haven't used a lot of the other ones. As far as identifying which one's the best for you, the best thing you can do is really just try them. So I would take a week and test each one out over a couple of days and see if it's got the features that you need. Yeah. Yes.
Any recommendations for a good visitor management system?
Visitor management system. I think that your front desk person should do a fantastic job managing those days. Unless your building is very large, which I've never worked with a very large building, which was like more than 2 floors. So it's often easier to just have 2 staff and one goes and gets the person, or you tell the person who's at the desk to send a text message or something like that. I haven't worked with any visitor management platforms, but
Because any meeting management software doesn't integrate with visitors because they have to come in the space, go directly to the meetings, meet the co-working member, and get on with it. That is not seamless for us. The experience is very painful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely an area for improvement. But again, it's one of these things where it's like one tool can do it all, and even though we try, right, it's everything takes longer to integrate and develop than you think it does.
Yes.
But yeah.
We'd love to get some recommendations in the future, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe you should look at that for us.
Yeah. I will do more research for next year, and I will know everything about visitor management systems. You'll be bored.
Envoy is a fantastic tool.
Jackson's Envoy is great.
Yeah. When you're talking about communication with members, right?
Yeah.
You suggested chat platforms, but sometimes we also need to, when we're talking about, multiple spaces that we're running together simultaneously, and a lot of members, you can't really have a one-to-one conversation every time you need some kind of feedback from them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Continuous feedback is something that's becoming like a hassle for us, like when we are managing, like we are talking about multiple members, right?
Yeah.
Now, like there's no particular tool, do you have some recommendations for a particular tool that would go for a member feedback kind of situation?
Just gathering feedback like surveys and stuff like this?
Yeah, surveys and probably tracking certain metrics like a satisfaction score or something.
Yeah. There's lots of really great form builders where you can do this. Wufoo Forms is great. I really like them. Very simple to use. You can just build a form any way you want, send a link, and people will fill it out. SurveyMonkey is really great if you want to figure out anonymous results. These are the main platforms that I've used.
Yes, so these are basically typically forms, right? So you'll have to extract this data and then see like whatever analysis you need to do.
Not with SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey definitely it anonymizes the results, and if you wanted to, and it feeds them into some useful charts for you to check out. That's the only real one I've used. I haven't done a lot of surveys. I think that people don't fill out surveys. I think you're definitely, it's the definition of selection bias, right? Because the people who fill it out are the people giving feedback, but what about the people who didn't fill it out? I know it's insane, but I would be more likely to send a message to every single one of my members and try to get the feedback or chat with them when they come to the door or something like that. So,
Yeah, but like at
I'll
5,000
give-
people, it can't be possible, I think.
what's that?
With 5,000 people, it won't be possible, right?
Hire more people. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Yeah, I just you're going to get a better sample size with 5,000 people, so in that case, I think it would be fine to do something like that. But just consider that there are going to be people who just don't fill out surveys because they don't like filling out surveys. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'll go to you last because you've already asked a few, but I'm gonna go here.
How about a tool for hosting videos when you have speakers come in to live events?
Hosting videos, you mean like live streaming videos, or just for posting later?
For posting later.
Okay, cool. I really like, Vimeo, YouTube, both of those work pretty well. We use Vimeo because I think I like the user interface a little bit better, and Jack probably likes the quality better. I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, that's what we use. It's pretty standard. Yeah, Facebook Live. Yeah, been doing a little bit of that as well. Twitter, we can go live on Twitter and Instagram as well. So. And it just hosts it for you. But I think if you're going to embed it, it's probably a little bit easier to do it on Vimeo or YouTube. I don't think you can embed a video from Facebook. I guess, yeah, you can download it. Yeah. Cool. One more question. Preferably from someone, you've already got a couple, so she's a lower count than you. Is anybody that hasn't asked a question like ask a question? Okay, okay.
Just need to know if anyone is actually monitoring outcomes and statistics of if you've got particularly startups or those who are working in your space, if you're actually tracking their growth, like their increase in revenue or their increase in how many employees they've got, what you're using to do that, if you're doing it and what you're using to do it.
That's interesting. I know I've met some people who are doing that, and there's an example that will come to mind later that I can't think of. I'll try to remember who it is, but it's I don't know what tools they would be doing that with, to be honest. Yeah, is anybody doing that? Is anybody tracking the performance of their members with analytics and stuff like this? Yeah?
A lot of tools that incubators or accelerators use, like VC firms do as well, Venture 360. They do offer such template to track KPIs, growth metrics, that can be customized to the business model of the startup.
Okay.
Venture 360.
Venture 360?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Great. That's it. Thank you so much, guys. I hope it was useful.